Welcome to Watch the Bookerman and to episode number 18 of Paul Heyman's TNA 2010. This show that I'm booking today is Lockdown 2010, hopefully much anticipated. I've certainly been looking forward to booking it, and there's just a couple of things that I want to put across before we get into the event itself. One is that this is the first show I'm booking outside of the Impact Zone. We're in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the same area that Lockdown 2009 was from. The venue isn't actually in this database, but the idea is that we're going back to that building because I really enjoyed Lockdown 2009. I didn't watch all of it, but I rewatched some of it in the build-up to watching this show, particularly the X Division Escape match and some of the Lethal Lockdown match. I thought it was an enjoyable show. I think it's good to come back to Philadelphia for this. It's sort of a homecoming for Paul Heyman as well, our first show outside of the Impact Zone, fittingly in Paul Heyman's backyard or ECW's backyard. I've gone back and forth and I thought about going back into Southeast simply for this reason. We look at AJ Styles' overness here, 70 in the tri-state, 79 in the Southeast, so his performance isn't going to be quite as good as it would have been if we were in the Southeast. And also Kurt Angle is 82 in the Southeast, which is where the company is based, whereas the tri-state it's 76. I think it's still going to be a good match. The two obviously work really well together, but the sort of promises and the vows that I made that this would be our best show yet, or this particularly would be the best match yet, I'm not sure we're going to deliver on. There is something else though that I think should help the show overall. I'm going to change something about the product before we go into it. We've been on ensemble and consistent for our match and angle focuses respectively. I don't think that's been getting the best out of our ratings from what I've seen. Obviously our shows are a little bit up and down. Some of the knockout segments, some of the Jimmy Jacobs segments, really far below some of the best things. So I'm just going to switch it to a regular focus, and I do think that if I've sort of looked at the numbers right, that will improve our show significantly. It's a bit of a risk trying it out for this pay-per-view, which is so important, but I do think that it's going to make for a better Lockdown overall, and we'll find out because we are going into that show right now. And as we go into the pay-per-view, I just thought I'd note that this was actually a time in reality, I don't know if people remember, when the Icelandic volcano eruption caused sort of widespread disruption and inconvenienced a lot of people by grounding flights, etc. So it's perhaps fitting that we book in a lockdown during this time, given everything that's happened in the world recently. But we begin with a video package focused on the structure within which every match on the night will be contested, the 6 sides of steel. It will surround the ring, a brutal structure that is offering all competitors the chance to truly prove who the better man or woman is within the cage. The X Division Escape is just one example of matches on the card that will be contested for a championship, and all 6 of the company's titles are defended tonight. One match only on the card will not be contested for a title, the first one of the night. A pretty big announcement, I think. Mauro and Taz hopefully getting everybody watching hyped, because we are going straight into that Team Jeff Hardy versus Team Desmond Wolfe Lethal Lockdown match. So a huge way to kick off the pay-per-view, I think, and we begin, of course, with that man advantage for Team Desmond Wolfe. Interestingly, Jeff Hardy is actually the first entrant for his team, whereas it is Brian Kendrick for Team Desmond Wolfe. Notably, Desmond Wolfe is the last entrant in the match, or at least in terms of his team, of course. I'll go through it actually. Jeff Hardy comes out, then Brian Kendrick, then Paul London, so the Hooligans are able to really work well as a team and take advantage. Hernandez comes out, then Eric Young, then we get Alex Shelley, Mr. Anderson, Chris Sabin, Desmond Wolfe and Samoa Joe. It's then time for the ceiling to come down, and it's the typical way this match goes. The heels dominating until the face comes. The face gets a bit of a comeback. The heels dominate until all 10 men are in the ring. Notably, when Desmond Wolfe's trying to get in the ring, Jeff Hardy comes straight for him, going through the entrance of the cage and doing a front drop kick to Desmond Wolfe, so they end up on the outside when the cage door gets locked. This is so that we can set up them two to sort of focus on one another, and Jeff Hardy and Desmond Wolfe end up on the top of the steel cage. It's a bit of a convoluted thing I always find when they do that, and also I don't like the idea that the cage, the old concept of the cage is to keep people in, and the first match we're kind of undermining that. I'm not worried about that too much, simply because we wanted to have a big spot on the top of the cage. Jeff Hardy hitting a splash from a ladder through a table to Desmond Wolfe. It's actually something he did in reality in the 2010 Lethal Lockdown, so I thought I'd bring that into our timeline, and we then get the 4-on-4 inside the ring really, and it is Joe who picks up the victory, making Eric Young tap out to the Coquina clutch. So a dominant return for Samoa Joe after his defeat, his first match back since Destination X. There's some good performances in there, but it's not a particularly great match. A 69 is an okay way to kick off the pay-per-view. Rob Terry at ringside shouldn't really have been there. Jeff Hardy taking that stunt bump that I mentioned on the top of the cage. Mr. Anderson off his game, but we did get the crowd hotter. I think the booking details, or the road agent notes rather, it was a slow build storytelling match. But we of course had those big spots in there that hopefully helped gain us a couple of points. But a really, really good way, I think, to kick off the pay-per-view. Weapons involved, that should really, I think, get the crowd hyped. And while we had good heat going into that, hopefully we can continue. And by the main event, we're going to have a fever pitch. And that will hopefully add to the rating for the pay-per-view main event. We are in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So I think that's a really raucous, energetic crowd, and I think in reality that would really, really help the pay-per-view overall. It probably won't, because our guys are more popular in Southeast in game, but I still think the idea of being in one of these hotbeds of wrestling really does help Lockdown feel unique and special. Following that opening match, the commentators reiterate just how violent and destructive these 6 sides of steel is. If anybody didn't believe it beforehand, they've just seen the Lethal Lockdown. They know exactly what we're in for tonight. Jeff Hardy is the winning captain, but lays out cold on the top of the cage alongside the losing captain, so we're kind of putting over there that despite Desmond Wolfe and Jeff Hardy having different results from the match, both of them have ended up in the same position. So they've both beat each other once, they've had a draw, and in this match you could almost say that it's a 50-50. Team Jeff Hardy, of course, picking up the win, but only one man looks like a winner coming out of the match. Stood alone, surrounded by a sea of competitors. I think this would be a really good image to try and put Samoa Joe back over. He has returned to action, he has sent a message to the entire TNA roster, and he stands tall in the middle of the ring, dominant in that Lethal Lockdown match. It's a 70 rating, so a decent rating again, and hopefully with the way that we're doing it with the regular focus now, these decent segments will have even more weight than they previously did, and can hopefully get us a strong rating for this Lockdown pay-per-view. Matt Morgan is then interviewed in the back. Of course, he was kind of rejected by Jeff Hardy. We all thought that he'd be a part of Team Jeff Hardy, but Joe had been already called by Jeff Hardy in the previous weeks, but he's requested the time. He's not bitter about it at all, and he congratulates Team Jeff Hardy on their victory in the opener. He spoke about those bullies like Desmond Wolfe in the roster, and they're toxic in the locker room, so he's delighted to see them put in their place, and he's sure that they will not be the only guys who are humbled tonight at Lockdown. So a quick interview with Matt Morgan there, just getting him on screen and cutting a promo with Jeremy Borash. We then go into the second match of the night, and Jimmy Jacobs leads Awesome Kong and Hamada to the ring. He cuts a promo for their Knockouts Tag Team Championship match, which will be against an unannounced team. We're not really hyping up the open challenge of it too much, because we don't want people to expect it to be some big names or some well-known tag team. Jacobs calls out the fact that he had to do Paul Heyman's job for him, but he's found the perfect team to get their message across. So the idea here is not so much that the open challenge was about finding any great team in the world, but more just about Jimmy Jacobs having to do the donkey work himself because Paul Heyman has let him down. A follow-on really from the segment from Impact on Thursday. Jacobs calls Kong and Hamada the 2 most dominant knockouts in the history of professional wrestling, but adds that they don't fit that certain mold, so they're not the priority for Paul Heyman. He'd rather get involved in the shenanigans with the beautiful people than focus on the 2 best wrestlers he has in this division. Tonight, they're going to break that mold as he invites the 2 sacrificial lambs to come and accept their fate. And it is 2 people who we don't really know. You may have seen them set to debut on one of the screens previously, but Brooke and Lizzie, of course, it's Brooke Tessmacher, Brooke Adams from WWECW, Lizzie Valentine, I think it is. I don't know her that well. Lizzie is only on a one-night deal, whereas I have actually signed Brooke to a contract. She will probably be known as Brooke Tessmacher going forward, but the introduction for her isn't, she's not going to look like a threat in this match because this is a complete squash match. And the idea is that Jimmy Jacobs has found 2 diva-type wrestlers who he feels we can just easily dismiss, and from the way the match is, it's absolutely dominant from Kong and Hamada. They are throwing the 2 women all around the ring, and it is literally just a showcase of them. Maybe that's disappointing to some people, but in 5 minutes and 18, after a truly dominant display, Kong pins Brooke with a flying splash. I probably should have had Lizzie lose that because of the way the storyline is going to go after this. Kong and Hamada making defense number 3 of the Knockouts Tag Team titles. It was not really in question. Hamada still not getting up there with the ratings, but I'm not going to worry too much about that because Kong definitely carrying the match, albeit only to a 30 rating. The 2 newcomers didn't work well as a team. Lizzie's bitch gimmick, which won't really matter because she's leaving, but Brooke gets a great initial rating for a diva gimmick. I probably should have set her a gimmick, but I just left it as the default one. Cool in the crowd, which is disappointing, but I'm sure we can get them back as we continue to build this show. Returning to the ring following Awesome Kong and Hamada's destruction of their opponents, Jimmy Jacobs produces a flag that had been tucked into the back of his jeans. The flag features the Project 10 logo and has "The New Age is Coming" written underneath it. Jacobs lays the flag over the bodies of the motionless challengers, standing tall with Awesome Kong and Hamada, who they had no idea that he was going to do that. But Jimmy Jacobs says a few words as well, improvising well in what is not really a good segment either. It was rated on his entertainment and the two women's overness. He's pushing the New Age more than Kong and Hamada are. They're just being represented by him, and it happens to be that he wants to put this New Age label on them. They're just doing their job. So again, this is why it's the face-heel divide kind of thing. Kong and Hamada aren't really doing anything heelish, and it's all Jimmy Jacobs pushing the storyline version for them, which, like I said, fits into their characters because they just want to get the job done in the ring. Before our second championship match of the night, we get a video package that looks at Kazarian's transition from being the heroic suicide character to the cowardly, arrogant, whatever word you want to describe him, but he is the X Division champion, and this is the guy we now know. There's no going back for Kazarian, as we see from his in-depth interview with Daniels. We show footage of his famous dive from the cage as suicide last year, with the implication being that that's not the same Kazarian we're going to see. There is an ever-growing list of rivals for this man and enemies, and he's made all of them over the last couple of months, thanks to Daniels really, who is very much a bad influence on Kazarian. All that will come together inside the X Division's signature match, the X Division Escape, here at Lockdown, and we go into that. It's a 59 rating, so it's okay. It's a decent X Division match. Homicide, surprisingly, the best performer of the whole group there. And the way this match goes is Creed gets eliminated, Homicide gets eliminated, Amazing Red gets eliminated. I'd like to put more into that, but it's just your multi-man elimination X Division match. We've seen plenty of them over the years in TNA. Lots of high flying, everybody gets a chance to get their shit in, but eventually we are left with Kazarian and Jay Lethal, who going into the match were realistically the two people who we believed had the chance of walking out with the championship, and Jay Lethal does an absolutely excellent job. He overcomes the odds, Kazarian beating him down, he climbs the cage, Jay Lethal. When Matt Morgan comes to the top of the ramp, as Jay Lethal's trying to come down, Matt Morgan has a stick, maybe some kind of 2x4, and he is swinging at Jay Lethal. Lethal cannot come down from the cage. Morgan's implying that he's going to catch him if he tries to jump, anything like that. So Lethal's only choice is to turn back. He goes to hit Kazarian with an elbow drop, which is another big moment. That's two big spots on the night so far. Jay Lethal momentarily trying to channel that Macho Man gimmick that he has left behind to do the Macho elbow from the top of the cage. He misses, and Kazarian is able to crawl out of the cage. Either way, Jay Lethal wasn't going to win that match because, of all people, Matt Morgan has shown up. So a very, very strange moment. Morgan has been vocally against Kazarian. He's been siding with Jay Lethal. He's been talking about these bullies who he hates in the roster, but he stays at ringside. The focus, of course, on the actions of the Blueprint Matt Morgan and why he appeared to intentionally cost Jay Lethal his opportunity at the X Division Championship. Jay Lethal should be the champion right now. There's no question about it. If Morgan hadn't come out, Lethal would definitely have won that match. Kazarian walks towards Matt Morgan, feigning confusion for a moment before offering his hand to Matt Morgan. The two men then embrace, it becoming clear that this was a premeditated plan. The involvement was not out of chance or any surprise to Kazarian. They knew what was going to happen, and considering the issues that the two men have recently had, Mauro and Taz are dumbfounded, just like hopefully the audience are, by this new alliance. They wonder how that might play into the Global Championship match later tonight. Daniels' group even stronger as he challenges Abyss for the TNA Global title. We then have to address this because we're turning Matt Morgan heel. I did like the idea of Hernandez and Morgan. I think I mentioned that early in the series, that I really did like the idea of two agile, athletic, big guys and how they were a different team to anybody else on the roster. But if you can look back at how I booked them in the 4 months, I personally think that something had to give, and I think that Hernandez, his style of wrestling is much more exciting. He plays the face better, I think. The way Matt Morgan carries himself, everything about Matt Morgan to me screams heel, and hopefully he can come into his own. He's going to stay as the badass, but that is a complete success for the turn. Really happy with that. Matt Morgan now joining forces with Kazarian, it seems, and that means that he is essentially the replacement for Tomko. Tomko left the company about 4 weeks ago, I think it was. I think it's fair to say that whether you like him or not, Matt Morgan is a significant upgrade. We then look to hype the Knockouts Championship match later in the night. Lacey Von Erich will be at ringside as the gatekeeper as Angelina Love challenges Tara for the top women's title, and she is joined by Madison Rayne as Lauren Brooks asks her about this match and her involvement. She can't wait to do that job tonight, serve as the gatekeeper and ensure that Velvet Sky, or anybody else for that matter, cannot get involved. While Lacey is upbeat and perky, there's clearly something weighing on Madison Rayne's mind. Lauren asks her about the ultimatum made to her on Thursday night and if she'd had any time to process that and think about what she's going to do tonight, but Rayne avoids the question. Instead, she just tells Lacey to be careful out there and walks away. It seems like Rayne is kind of washing her hands of the situation. She doesn't want to get involved. She hasn't made a decision. Lacey is momentarily confused by this, but shrugs and heads off with a smile on her face. So we're getting a bit more depth into this storyline now, I think, which I'm happy about. Didn't really find my way with what I was doing with the Beautiful People other than having Angelina Love bully Lacey Von Erich. I think this storyline and what I have planned is going to come into its own now. Things are getting ugly, advancing but losing heat unfortunately, but it's still a decent segment overall as Madison Rayne improvises well. I say it's a decent segment, it's just because it's green. If it was a yellow 39, I would have been thinking it's a terrible segment. Sometimes those colours throw me off as to what I think is acceptable, and this is more like it in terms of being acceptable. It's the minimum you'd expect from these two teams really, a 62 rating. They are inside the 6 sides of steel. Perhaps it is their lack of overness in the tri-state compared to, I wonder how this match would have gone down in the Impact Zone. Again, we'll probably see these two teams go at it in the future, so wouldn't worry about that too much. Again, we're carrying on what happened on Impact. Beer Money taking out the legs of Generation Me, seeing that that was their greatest asset, their high flying, the fact that they can outmaneuver Beer Money in the sense of being quicker and more athletic and agile. Beer Money are the champions for a reason, and it's because they always have a plan, continuing the heel push for them, but the fact that you begrudgingly accept that they are such an effective and efficient tag team. They take out the legs as Generation Me seem to be taking control of the match. Of course, it's a tornado match because I've never really liked the idea of having tags in a steel cage when there's no disqualifications. Why the wrestlers would adhere to that, I'm not really sure. Certainly the heels wouldn't adhere to that. Generation Me building up momentum. It's looking like, could they actually do this here? But they're able to take the legs out of Nick and Matt Jackson. Their experience showing as they retain the titles, pinning Matt Jackson with a DWI. Again, it's like I've said, middling performances. We want better from these guys. We're not getting it. Maybe we will over time. Again, I'm still keeping hope that these 4 teams that I've sort of put into this best tag team in the world storyline, the Hooligans, Motor City Machine Guns are the 2 teams involved here, can become top draws in the company, not just top tag team draws, top draws on the level of Angle and AJ and Joe and those kind of guys. The match did get the crowd hotter, so that might be more of a reflection on the stuff that came before it, but it's a decent match and I'm satisfied, I'd say. Not happy, but satisfied with that. Beer Money standing tall, having expertly taken apart their less experienced opponents. The commentators do put over the performance of Generation Me during the match. They did a really good job of taking the fight to Beer Money, but it also shows how efficient and effective Bobby Roode and James Storm are. Again, we look at this at 46. I do think in the Impact Zone, if we had a segment just based on their overness, I think it would do better. So I think I'm right in the theory that being in the tri-state is knocking us down significantly. But going to the regular focus, I've said this before, but I'm quite confident that is going to help the show overall, and we will see by the end of the night. Daniels then makes his entrance for the 5th match of the night, I think it is, and he is joined by Matt Morgan, beginning to cut a promo about how smart the guys are, and him and Kazarian are going to walk out as champions, and he's kind of counting his chickens before they hatch, as halfway down the entranceway, Hernandez comes out. He had no idea about Morgan doing this, obviously. His former tag team partner, or his tag team partner really, they've not officially broken up, but Hernandez is not happy and he is looking for answers. The two get heated. Before they can come to blows, Jay Lethal comes back out. He is in a bad way, he's holding his ribs, but he still has the energy and the aggression to lunge at Matt Morgan. All hell breaking loose really. Daniels trying to come between the two of them. Hernandez going after Daniels. This is before Daniels is going into a match, remember. Everybody else is ushered to the back eventually by security and members of the backstage crew. The mastermind realises that actually he probably spoke too soon, perhaps even revealing his plan too soon, because he now has to go it alone against the monster Abyss. So we advanced the Desmond Wolfe Jeff Hardy storyline somehow with this. I know multiple members of this segment are involved in it, but that's a really weird note to get. I wasn't expecting that, as we go into another title defense for Abyss, and he retains the title in defense number 3. And while Daniels does try and outsmart Abyss, really again we're putting over. The point of this match is that it's a dominant performance for the global champion. Every trick in the book is tried by Daniels, and it is a good match, a 70 rating. I think that'll probably be the second best match on the night, I think. And well, I'm hoping the main event will do better than that, otherwise this pay-per-view will be a bit of a flop. But we're still putting over as Abyss stands tall with the championship. Daniels is somebody who I really like, but I think that he's upper mid-card. He'll get a few wins here and there, but when he comes to his big matches, I don't ever see him being in the main event picture. That might disappoint people. There's something about him that doesn't scream main event star to me, and I think that being in this group with Kazarian and Morgan is instead going to help him this bad influence stable that we've built. It's a nice position for him where he's going to get a lot of TV time. He's going to be an important part of storylines in the show going forward. But I don't really see him as a top champion, whereas Abyss of course has so much potential as that monster heel within the roster. It almost goes without saying, but Abyss is looking more dominant than ever, and the question we've been asking since the very start of the year, since he beat Eric Young for the global championship on that first episode of 2010, who, if anybody, can stop the monster? This then begins the third hour of the show, and that is a disappointing rating considering we're in the tri-state. I expected this Paul Heyman promo to do really, really well, but the man in charge of TNA opens his door to speak with Jeremy Borash, promoting the main event of Lockdown. This was supposed to be that segment that hooked us in and got a little bit more heat to the storyline going into the main event. So in fact, if this is sort of the rating we're at, 73, then I'm going to get that note again about the lack of associated storyline. But Heyman puts over the two men in the match as the two greatest professional wrestlers on the planet. He knows he's had issues with both of them, and he's to blame for that. He's been trying to get under both competitors' skins. He's been trying to work out what makes Kurt Angle tick, what makes AJ Styles tick, and he thinks that he's got the answer to that. Paul Heyman says that this was always about bringing the best out of those two men, because them being at their best is what's best for TNA. He's sure that Lockdown is going to end with a bang as AJ Styles defends the World Heavyweight Championship inside these 6 sides of steel against Kurt Angle. So one last hype job from Paul Heyman. An underwhelming segment, really, I have to say. This is Paul Heyman cutting a promo in the tri-state, and I actually give it like 3 or 4 minutes. So really should have been better. That I was hoping to get that into the 80s and to give us just that extra push for the main event that we needed. Not happening unfortunately, but we go into the semi-main event Knockouts Championship match, and it's just showing the story of Angelina Love's return. We know who Tara is, we know that she's the top champion in the company, we know that she is that person who we are building all the rest of the knockouts around, but Love has been on the quest to win this title since returning. She's probably established as the most credible threat to the title. If there's anybody on the roster who's going to take the title from Tara, it would be Angelina Love, and she recently emerged as the top contender, winning a battle royal against 9 other knockouts. She'd been unafraid of making enemies along the way. One of them is former Beautiful People member Lacey Von Erich. There's also the question of where Madison Rayne will come into this. She was issued an ultimatum. She either shows her loyalty to the Beautiful People tonight, or Angelina Love will banish her from the group. We'll see how that unfolds inside the 6 sides of steel. And the story of the match is that Tara and Love are very, very evenly matched, but when Tara starts to take control, Velvet Sky does come out from the back and there is a distraction on the outside, but Velvet Sky is able to take the ugly stick and throw it in. Love hits Tara with the stick and tries to start crawling out of the ring, but the argument between Lacey Von Erich and Velvet Sky on the outside results in Velvet pushing Lacey into the cage door, which inadvertently slams it into Angelina Love. So Velvet Sky's actions actually causing Angelina Love to be hit in the face with the steel cage just as she was about to escape. It sounds a bit like it'd be a comedy spot. It's not supposed to come across like that, because it's more about Velvet Sky, the drama of Velvet Sky realising what she's done, shocked as Angelina Love stumbles backwards into a widow's peak, and Tara is quite lucky really to retain her title. She was hit with the baton, which would have made it a tainted victory for Angelina Love, but actually despite that, Velvet Sky's involvement has cost Angelina Love. Tara is still the Knockouts champion after the match. She takes delight in this. She realised what's happened as there's a replay on the screen. She's absolutely delighted to see that the Beautiful People's usual bullshit of trying to cheat has backfired on them, and cost Angelina Love the Knockouts Championship. We then get a video package prior to the main event and a little bit of a discussion from the commentators who want to talk about how big this match is. We get the tail of the tape. We want to put over that this is the biggest match that we've booked so far. Quite plainly, however Mauro and Taz could put that across, the intention of this segment is to show us the dynamic of the two men going into this match, which is absolutely huge. AJ Styles positioned as the true-born face of TNA. He came up as the company came up. They've grown together, and his championship reign thus far is recapped in detail. Despite this being a video package for the main event, the only time we see Kurt Angle in the footage is when AJ Styles is beating him. First, that multi-man match at No Surrender when AJ Styles finally became the TNA World Heavyweight Champion for the first time, pinning Kurt Angle, and Genesis 2010, the first pay-per-view that I booked where AJ cleanly defeated Kurt Angle in a one-on-one match. The suggestion here is that AJ, perhaps as the number of the man once considered to be the greatest wrestler in the world, and if AJ Styles defeats Kurt Angle inside the 6 sides of steel in the lockdown main event, there can be little contention that AJ Styles has proved himself as the very best wrestler on the planet. So again, as has been a little bit of the story in the build up to this, we're even leaning into the fact that Kurt Angle is being pushed to the side in the video package before. The idea being that you can imagine Kurt Angle watching this video package in the back before the match, and even that's firing him up. Paul Heyman till the very end, even down to how the video package is produced, we're trying to put across this idea that AJ is the face of TNA and Kurt Angle is yesterday's man. Of course, that's all about getting into the psychology, getting into the head of Kurt Angle, and we'll see how that falls out into this main event, and hopefully it can deliver. It's an 81, so it's, I think, joint with what they got, exactly the same as what they got in Genesis, so that's a bit of a relief actually, considering they're a little bit less over than they were back in January in the Southeast. I'm quite pleased with that. It's an 81 and 85, so not as fantastic as you'd expect, but they do have great chemistry and that has helped the match. The match did deserve better announcing. Mauro Ranallo, a weakling as he often is. One thing I actually thought about was putting Mike Tenay on for the big pay-per-views. I'm definitely going to do that for Slammiversary now. Probably should have done it here, had him come out as the guest commentator for the main event, because I do think that at this time he is better than Mauro Ranallo, certainly in terms of how he's rated in the game, and we want this to be a big dramatic match. It's only storytelling. I thought about doing epic and spectacle, but I've been told, and I have the feeling that it can sort of have too much of a toll, and AJ and Kurt's performances can actually drop because of the pressure of having to try and do that. So we're just trying to tell a story in a slow built match that works its way to the big finish. That big finish being a moonsault from Kurt Angle from the top. This isn't the finish, this is just some of the spots that happen. We do get Kurt Angle's big moonsault spot that he loves to do. He did it in 2010 against Mr. Anderson, so there's no reason he wouldn't do it tonight. And of course we have some other big spots. AJ Styles kicks out of an avalanche angle slam, and neither man in 24 minutes is willing to give up. There is nothing seemingly that will keep these two men down. When AJ Styles goes for a Pele kick, Angle manages to get hold of the ankle. The ankle lock, remember, that broke the ankle of Rob Terry, we think, on Impact. We didn't have that confirmed, but it certainly looked that way, and AJ just can't get out of it. The rope breaks don't help. Kurt Angle pulls him right back to the center of the ring and grapevines the ankle. Kurt Angle relentless. AJ Styles will not give up, but eventually that twist comes and Kurt Angle appears to break the ankle of AJ Styles. AJ lets out a yelp of pain and has no choice but to tap 3 times on the mat. Given how his offense is, he wouldn't be able to do the Styles Clash, he wouldn't be able to do the Pele kick, he wouldn't be able to do any of his moves really, because that ankle has been broken, we expect, and AJ Styles is defeated by Kurt Angle, the 40-year-old who was positioned out of the company, the idea being that he was no longer at that level required. Well, he's proved otherwise. It says it right there. Kurt Angle wins the TNA World Heavyweight title. This was a plan that I actually had. I was potentially going to do it going into Genesis, so this is a long time coming. I always wanted Kurt Angle as the TNA World Heavyweight Champion. Might be a decision that some people disagree with. The name of the series is the Young, Hungry, Aggressive Alternative. Can you say that Kurt Angle is that? He's formerly of WWE, so he doesn't really represent the alternative. He's not young, but he is certainly hungry, and Kurt Angle has proved tonight that he is the best wrestler in the world. Nothing Paul Heyman could do could stop this. He earned that title shot, he continued to fight, and he has become the first person to defeat AJ Styles since he became the champion at No Surrender 2009. Kurt Angle, the TNA World Heavyweight Champion, and he stands tall following the match, announced as the new World Champion and given the title his 5th title reign. The reason I've sort of booked it like this is that I love the idea of Kurt being sort of the one guy who we can compare to these young guys. Is AJ Styles on the level of Kurt Angle yet? Is Samoa Joe on the level of Kurt Angle yet? Is Mr. Anderson on the level of Kurt Angle yet? And the way that we'll know if we've got a new star, if Alex Shelley becomes a singles star, if James Storm, Robert Roode get a singles run, the only way that we'll know that they are bona fide stars is if they can beat Kurt Angle, because he is the bar, he is the best wrestler in the world. And as he's handed the title, the commentators put over the lineage of it. He has dominated this title. He's in his 5th reign. There's only been 10 reigns as champion, and he's had half of them. But there's also concern for AJ Styles in the ring. He's been a great champion. He has given his all. There's nothing taken away from AJ Styles. There is no shame in losing to Kurt Angle, who does check on AJ Styles. The two aren't friends, but he does check on the man because he may well have broken his ankle, and it's not a case that they hate each other so much that Kurt Angle's glad to hurt him. He's glad to be the champion, no doubt. But AJ Styles is left in the ring. Their personal issues seemingly squashed. Some things that are bigger than that. The respect between the two men is evident as Kurt Angle leaves the ring and heads up the ramp, allowing AJ Styles in a way to get the attention as medics come in, and the focus is on AJ Styles almost equally as it is to Kurt Angle as the show goes off the air. The commentators signing off the pay-per-view. Kurt Angle is the new TNA World Heavyweight Champion. But that's not all. Bobby Lashley appears at the top of the ramp, making his TNA return. I know that this has been long anticipated. We teased that he was leaving the company originally, then there was talks that he'd signed a new deal with the company, but Lashley hasn't appeared since Genesis 2010, the same night that Kurt Angle was defeated by AJ Styles, funnily enough, and Lashley comes down, goes nose to nose with Angle at the top of the ramp, but continues on his way. We all assumed that he was here to see Kurt Angle and to stake his claim to being the next contender to the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, but that's not why he's here. He comes down, pushes the medics out of the way. All the staff are scurrying away, terrified of Bobby Lashley, who lays into AJ Styles despite him being injured, despite him actually being in the process of being loaded onto a stretcher because of his broken ankle. Bobby Lashley does not care. He destroys AJ Styles in the ring, finishing it off with a dominator. Lashley stands tall in the ring to end the show, staring up to the top of the ramp where Kurt Angle is stood. Mauro and Taz signing off on a hugely shocking note to end Lockdown 2010. Bobby Lashley is back. He's taken out AJ Styles, and well, Kurt Angle is certainly put on notice. No sooner has he become the TNA World Heavyweight Champion than a very, very dangerous threat has emerged in the form of Bobby Lashley, and it's a 69 rating. That is disappointing. Do you know what I've done here? I think I've messed up here. I think I did the intro, and then I went out of the game, and I don't think I saved the changes that I made. I'm just going to give them two because I can't think of anything else, and I don't really want to. Maybe it's just a case that I don't understand how the regular focus works, but I did expect it to come out better than that. Let's just have a quick check. Yeah, so I've ballsed that right up. It should be. That's really frustrating because I think that show would have come out really well, and it's actually our worst pay-per-view yet. So I'd be half tempted to go back and book this show again, but I've just spoke. It's took me quite a while to get through this, so I really thought that'd be our best show yet. Everything delivered as I'd hoped it to, and that's a sour note to end the show on, really, isn't it? But yeah, so it's nowhere near our best show, our 6th best show. It is the best match we've had so far, best attendance by tenfold, similar ratings in terms of the pay-per-view as the other 3. I messed that up, but we go into the post-lockdown now. I was hoping to come out of this with I was expecting that to be in the mid-70s, to be honest. I was expecting a big upswing in terms of how we'd previously done it. Definitely saved as regular focus, so in future the show should be better, and hopefully this can be a lesson. I'm trying to think of a good thing to say to end the episode, but the follow-up to Lockdown, Kurt Angle's the new World Heavyweight Champion. We'll have a look at our champions now, actually. Abyss, Tara, Hamada and Kong, Kurt Angle, Beer Money and Kazarian. It's going to be a really, really good build. We're starting now the main build to Slammiversary. We've got Sacrifice in between. Hopefully you'll join me for that. Thank you very much for watching, and yeah, disappointing overall, but on to the next show.